If there are any rescue workers or whatever, then we'll definitely see them from up here. But I don't know why I'm telling you that.
Ezra steps quickly from stone to stone. Malika follows him closely up the scree slope. It leads them up, high onto the hillside, toward the peak of the valley. Pebbles and shale tumble away from their footsteps, rolling hundreds of feet to the base. Malika turns to survey their path. They have made a lot of ground. The little man was not so weak, it seemed. From here, the valley, in all its fading beauty, was in view. She sees the plumes of smoke. There are still many. How could they still be burning? What amount of her forest had been given up to the fire? She turns back to see that Ezra has made good ground on her. The girl runs on. Smoke has saturated the air. Soot covers everything. The tree trunks and canopy glow. Embers blaze, creeping over the timber. Weakened branches fall from on high, tumbling through the leaves and crashing to the earth. Fireflies once flew in this area, lighting up the night. On this day, only flaming debris hangs in the air. Renaissance painters couldn't provide a better picture of hell, and the greatest composers could not make a composition as frightful as the sounds that resonate there. The hunter's call, that hyena chuckle, the taunting, pitiless howl, laced with chords of despair, the sounds of the dying. An undead, sex now indistinguishable, pulls a carcass through the scalded undergrowth. Foliage parts, then breaks under its weight. Another undead, formerly a woman, runs up close to the hind quarters of the dead beast. She grabs at it, clawing the flesh with her nailless fingers. The hide is difficult to tear. She lifts the leg of the beast and bites at the softer flesh of the inner thigh. It comes away in her teeth. The first undead feels the extra weight on its prize. It turns to face its compadre. The creature lunges, hands raised in attack. The former female rolls on its back, submitting, showing contrition. It yelps and tries to dodge the vicious bites of the hunter. As the attack continues, her neck falls away, revealing the spinal bones. She scrambles away, head swinging free of the sinew that binds it, trying to escape. The attacker lets her move off. It watches the ruined thing, watches as the blood pours from the major arteries, watches as the ragged, animated corpse slips on its own fluid and crumbles, finally becoming part of the caustic landscape. The attacker returns to its prize, clamping its jaws down on a foreleg. The creature continues its work, pulling the carcass deeper into the smoke. The sound of the undead becomes clearer. More and more hooting, screaming too. As the corpse is dragged through the forest, the undead congregate. They toil. They run back and forth with different beasts in their mouths. Some have birds and small mammals. Others pull antelope and large monkeys, all of them heading to the same area. A tall column of flesh appears before the undead hunter, darkening the already dim forest, taller than the ancient trees that neighbor it. The creature steps over other carcasses, some still shiver with life. Finally it stops. Broken red eyes peer up at the pile of bodies and carrion. Rib cages, organs, and limbs stacked higher than the trees. A puddle of red mud circles the ground around it, soaking the soil. The undead hunter lifts its prize up onto the pile, with a final burst of effort. With no more fuss, it walks back down the hillock of meat, joining the mass of other creatures, returning to its compulsions. Kay is still running, parting the leaves as he gallops amongst the greenery. The howling follows him. One call comes from his right flank. He veers left. Now a shriek comes from his left, forcing him back the other way. His face is covered in ash. The sweat from his brow leaves lines down his face, like the facial makeup of some ancient warrior. Up ahead a stream beckons, slow running and deep. He collapses into it. Water swells up to his waist. He dunks his head, grateful for this refreshment. But now the beasts are closing in, their toxic red eyes hang in the gloom that surrounds Kay, between the branches, amongst the ravaged palms. He grips the furthest bank and pulls himself out. Then he looks up towards the dazed sun. It squats above the rocky spine of the valley, the dense smoke diminishing its lower portion, creating a vision of a floating island. A pout slips onto his face. The warrior is scared. With renewed vigor he heads on, running to the high ground, through the dense leaves and bushes, faster and faster. He dodges the low branches, leaps over fallen trees. Then he hears it, amongst the calls and jeers of the baying undead. Another type of call, a scream, a human scream, coarse and drawn out, trailing away at the end of each yell. Kay slows slightly. His head turns to hear the sound better. Who could it be? The scream is heard again. Now he stops running and spins around, his forehead tense, hands pulled up over his mouth. He knows that voice that is breaking from the strain of screaming, high-pitched and agitated. The voice belongs to his friend. Kay turns away. He starts to walk, resuming his trek up the hill. Muso grips at the bare roots and grass. He claws the ground up as he's pulled along. The choked screams that rattle from his throat sound almost like laughter. The anguish has tired him, screams turning to moans and yelps. The guard looks across at the undead. Then he cries out again. Panting follows, the sight of its mouth buried deep in his calf, so close to his heel. Every tug and pull from the undead creature sends a shockwave of pain up the guard's spine. But he can only plead and cry, his energy spent from the pain and his earlier exertion. Without reason, the undead relinquishes its grip. Its ruined face angles upwards, peering into the canopy. The thing sucks air into the holes in its face, the lack of nose helping it to scent. It starts to growl, revealing its broken teeth. Muso can't believe his luck. He yanks his leg away from the creature, rolls over, and looks around for a weapon, or anything that can kill the thing. He picks up a rock, and then flings it away. Not big enough. He spots a thick branch, perfect for beating the beast. It's only a few feet from him, so the man grips at the roots and grass, pulling himself along on his belly. The branch gets closer. As he reaches for it, he sees something, red and white paper amongst the leaves, a cigarette packet. The undead, staring straight up, unleashes a howl, a call that echoes around the valley. Muso snaps into action. With the creature's back turned, he moves in for the attack, dragging himself along on his elbows. The creature lets out another great howl. Muso is ready to strike. He cocks his arm back and swings. Before the attack connects, Muso finds himself covered in blood and flesh chunks. It's sticky, binding his eyelids together. Ears ring. The deafening howls of the undead are replaced by a high-pitched whining. From under the mass of gore, he sees that the creature has no head left. A peninsula of flesh hangs from its neck, an ear still attached. The legs fold under the weight of the carcass, leaving the mangled thing to fester in the long grass. Muso, having momentarily forgotten about his pain, stares at his assailant. Blood sprays from the massive wound. Then a wad of phlegm lands near the body. The guard looks up to see the old man, sliding from branch to branch, the tree cracking under the weight. He sighs and starts to moan again. Soon the old man is standing at his side. He leans down to pick something out of the grass. Muso peers up, timid, trying to cover his tears.
Keep weeping, that'll help. First you won't stop screaming, then that thing starts with all its howling, and now you're crying. Every fucking demon will be on us in minutes, so shut your fucking mouth.
The old man scowls at Muso.
Help me get up, please.
The guard pleads.
When you stop whining. I'm not whining, just help me.
Muso raises his arms. With a groan of displeasure, the Eldster helps him up off the ground. They grapple each other as the injured man finds his feet. Muso wraps an arm around the man's shoulders. Clumsy steps and a lot of heavy breathing follow. The men reach their totem of hope, the crumbling tree. Some leaves remain, enough to lend them cover, but the Eldster stops short. A menacing sound, a growling, rumbles from behind them. They turn. Muso squeals with pain, slumping against the tree. Bushes shiver. Red eyes can be seen there, shining. The animalistic cackle fills the air. Old man shakes himself free of Muso, then brings the rifle up to his right eye.
You fucking killed us,
he shouts.
What sort of Christian talks like that? If my wife heard you, she'd slap the beard off your face. She'd probably... I'll fuck your fucking wife in her fucking ass. Huh? They say you guys got big uns, but mine is fucking fat, and it's fucking sweaty right now, and I'm gonna wipe the fucking sweat all over you. Get the fuck up that tree, you mangy fucking anus. You're scared, aren't you, old man?
Muso smiles as he speaks.
If you help me get up there, then we will both be fine. But dropping me on the ground and acting like an animal isn't going to get us anywhere.
The guard sits, his face trying to appear calm, as the old man swings the rifle wildly, aiming in all directions. The undead have filled the area.
Move yourself!
The Eldster yells.
I can't use my leg. You have to help me. How many times should I tell you? Fuck!
The old man shouts. He drops the gun and helps the guard to his feet. Muso reaches up, gripping a low branch. He raises his good foot and waits. The old man does nothing. He just looks at Muso with contempt.
Lift my foot, please,
Muso says, with a roll of his eyes. The man leans down gingerly, then takes a hold of his shin. They struggle, but Muso is soon in the tree. He looks down at the other man.
Pass me the gun, quickly. I'll watch for scaries,
Muso says.
You know how to use it properly?
The old man questions, gathering up the rifle and passing it to the guard. The man in the tree wraps the rifle strap around his shoulders, then aims it directly at the Eldster's face. A smiling Muso starts to laugh, joining in with the undead chorus. Now the oldie understands. He stares up at Muso's grinning face and down the barrel of his own gun.
I just saved you, man. What are you doing?
The old man grumbles.
My wife is a saint. Now fuck off.
Muso shouts loud for the entire world to hear. The white-haired man turns and runs. Malika pulls herself up onto a large, flat-topped boulder. It sits just below a plateau in the foothills. She tackles it with relative ease, then starts on the next boulder. Its moss slips and sticks under her nails. With some effort, the young woman climbs the stone. Now she can see the finish line, the reason for this exertion. Beautiful flat land, covered in grass and other greenery, busy with bees and butterflies. Hours before, the priestess had ascended to this point too, though Malika wasn't to know. Her feet led her up to this point in the hope of finding the old hag, but her trail was lost. After that, it was difficult to say why the girl kept climbing. Now, arriving at this place, she feels quietly pleased. It calms her. The brilliant green tones of the flora seem refreshing. The air is cooler, cleaner. She turns to look out over her land. The valley is not as she remembered. An empty feeling builds in her stomach. The view is sickening. Ruin has come to all that she can see. The valley floor is black. Huge sections of forest have disappeared, replaced by charred wood and ash. Fire still burns, here and there. A few pillars of smoke wind their way up into the sky. The unburnt parts suffer too, sick and mouldy. Vibrant colours of all hues have turned to fetid greys and browns. The sight makes her retreat, back from the edge. A new vision fills her periphery. Tall piles of carved stone, monoliths made to honour great heroes and healers. The ruins of her ancestral burial grounds lie before her. She walks towards them slowly, taking in their majesty. Memories and feelings swirl in her head. Her father, her family, the dead, the dying, blood, so much blood. A few seconds later, Ezra's head appears at the cliff edge, red and sweaty. His shirt sticks to his back. His once pristine hair is now wild and unkempt. He smiles and sighs deeply as he tumbles onto the plateau. A cursory glance for Malika reveals nothing, so he lies on the ground, chest rising and falling rapidly. From afar, he hears a muffled voice, words that echo off the piles of stone. The little man rises with a groan, aching from foot to head. The distant voice turns to a scream. The man's body lurches forward, into the maze of monoliths, dwarfed by their size, with only the cries of his comrade for guidance. He canters down the gloomy path between the towers of stone. Ezra pants. The sweat runs down his forehead, making him wince as urea surges over his eyeballs. The crying is loud. He's close. Malika is on her knees, her face turned up to the sky. Tears stream down her cheeks. Hands reach up and become fists. She drums them against her chest, leaving bloody stains there. Across her lap lies the carcass of the virginal girl, barely recognizable now, just hair and flesh hanging from bones. Her final drams of blood soak into Malika's clothes. Without looking at the body, Ezra reaches out and touches his companion. She doesn't react. He moves closer, putting his arm across her shoulders. Malika moans and pulls at her hair. She speaks intermittently, some kind of prayer. The words make no sense to his ears, but the little man feels their significance. She orates with trembling tones, chastising the world and its ways. Finally, she pushes the body away. It slips off her knees and comes to rest in an awkward position. Ezra pulls her up and walks her away, to sit at the cliff top. They gaze out over the forest, Malika twitching with grief. The little accountant tries to comfort her. An inept hug is delivered with little charm. Rather roughly, he wraps his arms around her. The gambit works. He feels her shivering abate. which brings a weak smile to his face. It's the closest he has ever been to a woman. Her fragrance, the smell of her hair, they are exhilarating. She nestles her face in the nape of his neck, taking the broken world from her view. Soon Malika is asleep, her shock and the exhaustion from the trip taking its toll. The little man leaves her at the cliff's edge. He wanders about the place aimlessly, and then a thought occurs. Ezra returns to the burial ground, still trying not to look at the body. He starts to build a circle of stones around it, placing large flat rocks over the girl, covering every bit of her. When the pile is as high as his waist, he stops work, too tired to move anymore.
Fucking cockroaches, trying to eat me up. Oh my days. Oh Lord, my days. I've got to keep going. Keep moving. Gots to keep moving.
Kay mumbles between breaths, energy nearly drained now. His body screams at him, telling him to stop, slow down, but the legs keep moving. Huge rocks dominate the landscape. The small path he follows winds between them, leading him up into the hills. It's not of human origin, this path, maybe the type left by wild pigs or bongo. The higher he gets, the harder it is to trek. Breathing is arduous, and there are other, more painful hazards. Kay had stepped into a few bushes with savage spikes. He also tried to clamber over a rock, only to realize as he was falling from it that the rock was a baked piece of clay, with hundreds of years of algae and moss covering it, and with no good right to be pretending to be a rock. Legs start to slow, arms hang limp at his sides. He follows the path, not worrying about the terrain or where the path leads. The land is almost terraced by years of landslides. Kay, with great relief, slumps onto a small mound of stones. He draws breath. Beads of sweat swarm down his face. In the distance, he hears the screams of the undead. The hunters are calling, tracking him down. Their energy does not falter, but Kay lacks the vigor to react. His eyes half open, chest bulging, trying to take in as much air as possible with each gasp. The calls repeat. Wailing and chattering swirls around the rocks. Kay takes his rifle, and with a small choke of exertion, he pulls back the lever, loading a bullet into the chamber, ready for action. He leans the nose of the rifle on a rock in front of him, and presses the butt up against his shoulder. The gap between the two huge stones is a natural bottleneck, and Kay knows it. His training told him this could be the only place where their numbers would count for nothing. He sways gently, eyes barely open, pupils trained on the killing field before him. He hears a call. They are close now. A grin creeps across his face, cheeks rising high. From places unknown, a single long screech races towards him. An undead voice calls louder than the rest. His first customer at the shooting gallery. Kay leans in, tucking the gun under his armpit. The undead appears in his sights, running on all fours like a dog, suddenly sniffing around the entrance to his Alamo. Bullets explode as they hit the stone, shrapnel and dust jumping from it. Kay fires in groups, little teams of hot metal that attack with vigor. Lumps of boulder fall to the ground, while tiny shards of shrapnel jump in shockwaves in the air. The barrage ceases. He waits for the dust to settle. A pathetic mess of bone and sinew is in the bushes, collapsed on the flora. A few of the tiny white flowers fall from their mother, sprinkling their petals over the pitiful former human. Kay pulls out the clip and checks his ammo. Another magazine is produced and jammed into the rifle. Then he takes some single bullets and refills his first clip, taking his time over this most dexterous of tasks. Once complete, he places it next to the weapon, just as another former human stumbles through the gap. It doesn't see him, this large male, the undead more interested in the pile of meat that was its comrade. Kay stares down the sights, breathing in controlled bursts to stay steady. Another creature appears. It approaches the pile of meat too. They look at each other, the beasts. The latecomer not sure what to do. It paces about, while the early bird chews on some miscellaneous pieces of flesh. The newcomer is joined by another, and another undead, all of them afraid to approach the larger beast. The gap in the rocks is now crowded, a perfect time to fire. He grips the stock, sights settle on the largest creature, a view that disheartens Kay, an undead filling what's left of its belly with rotting skin and entrails. The rattle of mechanical death emanates from his rifle. Bullets dance in the afternoon haze. They collide with solid rock, dust and blood spray choke the air. He fires 3 bursts. The creatures are neutralized. Only parts remain. Quickly now, Kay rips the magazine from the gun and pops the final bullet from the chamber. He grabs the full clip and slams it in. With a harsh pull on the lever, he's ready to go. Rifle set on the rock, the shooting gallery open for business yet again. His gaze set on those 2 huge rocks, now spattered with gore and dappled with holes. The hoots and wails from the undead remain. Their chanting and crying seems only meters away. Kay spits on the rock in front of him. The sweating hasn't stopped. His eyes barely open still, and he's starting to shake. The crosshairs of his gun never leave the gap in the rocks, all his remaining strength being used to keep him alert. Then he notices something. Movement, like a bird or small animal, emerging on top of the larger boulders. It's a hand grasping, trying to find grip, followed closely by a deformed head. They belong to one of the beasts.
Oh, you're lying, man. No way. No fucking way.
Kay mutters. The undead have learned, realizing the danger, changing their tactics. They try to climb rather than use the gap between the boulders. Their mistakes would not be repeated. He lifts the rifle, aiming up at the undead. The guard gathers his lungs full of sustenance, chest bulging. Then he pulls the trigger, knowing almost instantly that he has missed. No ricochet, no squealing from the creature. Must have fired high, over its head. Another lungful of oxygen is taken on board. Maniacally trying to relax, he fondles the trigger, then pulls. Stone near the undead turns to powder and sprays pain across its face. The thing loses its grip. Head disappearing first, then the rest falls from sight. Kay marvels at his good work, before seeing more movement. More rotting humans gambol through the gap. They do not stop for the carrion. They have live meat in view, and what finer meat could there be? Their eyes rest on their fallen compadres for only a second, before they are after him. Charging into Kay's killing field, the pack splits, 2 moving quickly to the left, the others spreading out on the right side. Kay has lost his advantage. He picks the nearest creature and unleashes metal fury on it, swinging right, winging the next foul thing. Their heads all turn to face him, shocked by the noise, worried by his rifle, its unnatural fury, with nose flaming like a dragon. Fearfully fast footsteps halt. The pack decide not to directly approach that metal-spitting machine. Kay steps up onto the rock before him and releases another volley. Grass jumps as his bullets tear through the topsoil, dust filling the air above. Another creature falls, on its way to death, but not quite there yet. Broken, legs shot away, its punctured head oozes dark blood onto the ground, feeding the soil, soaking into the greedy land like rich red wine spilling from the glass. The guard spins to his left. Another deathly rattle from the gun results in no hits. The pair of creatures are uncomfortably close. A good leap and they'd be on him. He fires again, gun muzzle flashing. Bodies tear apart suddenly, from head to waist. Their legs fall apart mid-stride. Chest cavities give way to his bullets. One of them twitches after hitting the ground. Kay puts 2 more bullets into its chest, and 1 in its head. Then another 2 in its legs. The thing kicks out, sporadically jerking with strangely lifelike aplomb. Kay turns to track the last of them. Only 1 undead left to destroy. He's a big one too. A former fan of fast food, no doubt. The remains of a mining colony uniform hang from its neck. A strip of material rings his waist too. Some sort of cargo trousers, now torn beyond repair. This human beast doesn't charge. It paces slowly, as if stalking prey. Kay lets out a withered laugh. Using the sights and the rest of his patience, he lines up his shot. The face of his foe rests in the crosshairs. The trigger is pulled. The creature remains unscathed. It has not been obliterated, as Kay hoped. He pulls the trigger again, realizing suddenly, no more ammo. The clip is ripped out. Empty. Panic fogs his mind. The man searches about him. There was another magazine, wasn't there? Did he empty it? Questions that couldn't be answered, as the magazine had slipped from view. The pockets of his trousers are searched. He feels something, the single bullet he had popped out of the chamber. It's pulled out and loaded into the rifle. But the beast has moved. It could be behind any of the large rocks that litter the slope. Kay points the rifle all around, in wide arcs, until he hears the brute's ragged breathing. It had remained incognito. Now its large body appears, perching on a rock not 10 meters from Kay's right. The guard pulls the trigger as soon as he sees it, fear making him twitch. His final bullet missed its target, hitting the rock below the undead, ricocheting and punching into the thing's ribs. The massive body drops off the rock, tumbling into the dirt. It lets out a howl, the sound of pain and fear resonating up from within. It was a different type of call, not like the usual undead cackle. The beast was signaling for help, crying out for relief. Kay stumbles over to it. He has no pity. His anger is all that keeps him mobile, the urge to kill driving him on. Now empty, the gun is tossed aside. The guard leans down and lifts a large stone to be used instead. Without thought, he throws the weighty thing down onto the head of the beast. The howls fade away. A gurgling, choked breathing replaces it. With a gasp, Kay lifts the rock again, bringing it up to his shoulder before dropping it. Blood spatters across the man's feet. The face cracks, cranium folding at the sides. "Fucking cockroach! I got you!" Kay picks the empty rifle from the ground and turns to leave. Looking up the hill, he sees them, standing all along the tree line, men staring at him. They wear camouflage and wide smiles.